Don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe, and turn on the notification for future alerts. We're going to talk about today Epstein estate photo trolls, Trump, Clinton, Woody Allen, and Bannon courting new images. So as you well know, that 95,000 images were released. And we have to propose questions. Do you believe that the victims will ever receive any justice? What is going to be the outcome? We have until the 19th.
Images that we understand that the committee is now in possession of. But one thing that stands out to me is the people whose faces are not redacted as compared with images where we can see that the women have faces that are redacted or blurred out. That suggests to me that either the estate and or the committee believe that some of these women are either minors and or survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, because there are other images, for example, including an image of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Bill Clinton, and an unidentified couple where both the man and the other woman's faces are fully visible. That means that they know who that person is in all likelihood, and that person is not someone they believe to be a survivor. On the other hand, then we see that picture with President Trump and those 6 women. That's not to say President Trump is complicit in any wrongdoing, but it may be that he was photographed with people that they believe to have been trafficked or abused by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Of course, the other thing that stands out to me, I just want to level set for our audience. When the committee issued the subpoena in the first place, it was because they came to understand that there was a birthday book, right? It was based on the Wall Street Journal's reporting over the summer. Once they understood that the estate was in possession of that birthday book, they crafted a subpoena. And the subpoena did not ask carte blanche for every piece of paper that the estate had that could possibly relate to abuse or trafficking by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. There are very specific requests for certain types of documents. And then, as Ali just mentioned, there is a request for photographs and videos that are reflective of Jeffrey Epstein's properties that he either owned or operated, mostly his homes. And of course, we are now seeing some images that appear to be taken on private airplanes as well. But will they go back to the well? Will they ask for more now that their appetite has been whetted? I think that's totally possible. And it's a nice contrast with what they've asked for the Department of Justice, both in their subpoena to DOJ, but also in the Epstein Files Transparency Act, where they are calling for the Department of Justice to produce a much, much broader universe of everything in their possession that could relate to their prior investigations of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, of course, with some exceptions for victim privacy and personally identifiable information. But the requests to the estate, by contrast, are far more limited, and therefore what we can glean from it may also be more limited.
This was a huge dump of photos that we're just getting into. I mean, some 95,000 photos were reportedly turned over to the committee in recent days, Ken. And as we share some of those that we're seeing already, Lisa noted that the faces that are blacked out were done so by the Democrats on the Oversight Committee. The men in these pictures are high-powered, certainly very recognizable faces for a lot of our viewers. Most have acknowledged relationships with Epstein, but have denied anything inappropriate or criminal. And we should note that nothing that we've seen in these photos further any claims or evidence of wrongdoing at this point. What are we hearing so far in reaction from these men, Ken? And if not today, what have they said in the past?
Yeah, I'm not aware that they've reacted yet to the publication of these photos, but you just made it really important. Look, we're seeing obviously very recognizable people here. There's Woody Allen, Steve Bannon. There are photos of Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Alan Dershowitz, who was a lawyer for Jeffrey Epstein. All of these men, well, first of all, we should be very upfront with the viewers. These photos so far it's not revealing anything new. We've long known that these men have had relationships with Epstein. They've all acknowledged that. And they've also said, as you pointed out, that they did nothing wrong, that they were not aware of his trafficking of young women. And I think it's also important to point out that, the Democrats are releasing these now. The Democrats and the Republicans could have pressed the Biden Justice Department to release Epstein files. They could have issued a subpoena a long time ago. They didn't. And the Democrats are doing this now because they sense that putting this information out puts pressure on Donald Trump. This is a problem for Donald Trump, this story. And they're doing it in part for political reasons. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but that's just the world that we live in.
Remember, the victims do want all the evidence out there too. They have also been calling for more transparency on what was in these files. These pictures that we're seeing, again, coming from the Epstein estate, not from the DOJ at this point. Barrett, what do you see as the significance of these pictures from an evidentiary standpoint? And do you see any legal risk in releasing these photos publicly?
So I think it's really interesting because for the public, this is sort of, an ongoing process where we're getting little pieces of evidence. We imagine, or little pieces of information. I don't even know that it can be called evidence, but we can expect to get even more, especially once we get closer to that December 19th deadline for DOJ to release all its files. But I think a few points have been made today already that are just worth emphasizing. The first one is we're getting these little pieces of, info with no context. This is also going to be the case when we get DOJ's files. You might see notes. You might see an FBI agent's, scribbling on a thing. You might see what's a 302, which is an FBI more formal report, but there's not going to be a lot of context in some of these. So for us diving in, looking at these things, we're desperate to try to put the pieces together to try to, make a narrative or make a story. It may not be that easy because we are.
When I look at this, it's like, I think like the Epstein files, a lot of focus has been on Trump. You want to implement Trump, but there are a lot of high power men that was going to Epstein Island. Just like they said that former President Bill Clinton, he visited the island over 26 times. Why was he there 26 times? You have Prince Andrew that has now been, I guess because of his connection with Epstein, he's lost his titles and everything. He's actually put out of the palace. So there are some people are getting ramifications from being involved with Epstein, but the pictures that have been released, it doesn't implement any other people thus far, like Woody Allen. None of the victims have ever said that Trump was involved in doing anything to these women. But they know that women were violated. Not they weren't even women, they were children at the time. So how are they going to be vindicated when it's all said and done? And how much outrage or how much push is going to come from the public, because the public are the ones that have been saying release the Epstein files. Trump ran on saying he was going to release the Epstein files. Trump signed the order to release the Epstein files. And they do have pictures I saw with Elon, with different people that was in the company of Epstein, but that wasn't breaking the law. So the whole objective, do you support the women? Should the men, and should someone be implemented other than Maxwell? The only one that went to prison for this was Maxwell, who was, the companion or the other person that was involved in what happened to these young girls. But they said it was thousands of girls. So it's like nobody is paying for the crimes that had happened to these women. We're going to hear from Megyn Kelly because we like to hear both perspectives. The Democrat and the Republican side. Like, this is what she has to say about it.
Moments ago, the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released photos from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. We're getting dribs and drabs of this, and we had some pictures already, and here's some. There are some that show Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Steve Bannon, Bill Gates, and others. None of the released images depicts any sexual misconduct. None is believed to depict underage girls. It was not immediately clear when or where they were taken or by whom. Okay, here's one. This image, I haven't seen it, I'm seeing it with you for the first time, shows what appears to be a bowl of novelty condoms and a caricature of Trump's face. The bowl has a sign that reads Trump condom, $4.50. Each condom bears an image of Trump's face with the text, I'm huge. I have no idea what the context of this is. It's just like being dropped out, like, I guess, Trump and condoms. So it's interesting to the Dems. Another shows Trump with 6 women wearing Hawaiian leis whose faces have been redacted by the committee. Okay, no one's shocked to see Donald Trump with attractive young women. It's kind of been something he's done his whole life. Others include Steve Bannon and Epstein taking a photograph in a mirror. This too is not a surprise. Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein were a lot closer than we knew. This show disclosed that a month ago, where we talked about the tapes we had heard in which Epstein was being coached by Melissa Rumler, the former Obama White House counsel, and Steve Bannon, and how to handle his growing reputational and legal problems post the Miami Herald expose of him in 2018. Let's see, Bill Clinton with Epstein and Maxwell, and another couple. Tech billionaire Bill Gates with the former Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew's like the Waldo of the Jeffrey Epstein world. Former Harvard President Larry Summers and lawyer Alan Dershowitz also appearing in pictures from the estate. Of course, we know that Alan represented Epstein, getting him that sweetheart deal. Last but not least, House Democrat Oversight tweet on the photos released. Breaking, Oversight Dems received 95,000 new photos from Epstein's estate. These disturbing images raise even more questions about Epstein and his relationships with some of the most powerful men in the world. Time to end this White House cover-up, release the files. This just broke moments ago. The Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released.
So, like, what we want to find out is, like, who's at fault. Now, the Democrats have these photos as well. They could have released the files, but it's the Republican administration that's releasing the files. But the files that have been released have not been implementing anyone as far as wrongdoing. So it's like, who's going to pay for what happened to these young girls? Now, we're going to look at one of the victims, and we're going to hear what the Democrats had to say, because there are victims. What?
The song said,
What?
I'll scroll up. They said, "You're the most beautiful woman on the screen I ever seen. You should be a movie star."
Oh, thank you so much. God bless you. But you know what? This is so serious. So we want to ask ourselves, like, the Democrats and Republicans have been, crying out to this government to release these files. Okay, 95,000 pictures have been released. Now, we're only seeing a handful of them. So they have to go through everything, I guess, by December the 19th. But at the end of the day, what's going to happen to these young girls that were violated at such a young age? Here's one of the victims, and this is her story, just so you guys know. They put a face behind the story. There are victims that have still been waiting for justice, and it looks like they're finally going to receive some justice. But are they? Because everything that's being put out,
becoming a Broadway actress. She was thrilled when she was accepted to a performing arts high school in the city. And it was outside that school back in 2001. She says a woman first approached her.
She was definitely trying to get to know me, trying to find out, where I was from, where I grew up, who I lived with.
Rose says the woman kept showing up, talking to her, sometimes offering to buy her lunch or a soda.
The first time she brought up the name Jeffrey Epstein, how did she describe him to you?
Dave was just a great guy. He's just saying, he's helped me. I've struggled. She was similar to me.
Did she say he could help you with your career?
That was a big part of it.
And when you think of her now, you used the phrase, you said the recruiter. You felt like she was
for sure
for someone for him.
100%, yeah.
Rose says the recruiter brought her to Epstein's townhouse, just blocks from the school.
When you first met him, what did you think? What did he say?
Very nice. Basically saying that, he's heard a lot about me. The recruiter was talking such nice things.
Rose says she was served wine in Epstein's kitchen and they talked. When she left, she says she was given $300 and was repeatedly invited back.
The secretary would contact me
and say,
"Are you free? Can you come by? Epstein would like to see you."
She became familiar with the eccentricities inside Epstein's home.
There was a lot of artwork that had insinuated nudity with women. And I remember very suggestive. He had a bathtub that was kind of opened, and there was prosthetic breasts that he could play with while he was taking a bath, I guess. It was very odd. And the painting that was literally the massage table would be here, and this painting would be right here. And it was a very pretty naked woman, and he used to always say that I look like her.
She says after a few weeks of visits, she was escorted alone to what she says Epstein called his favorite room in the house, the massage room, and things turned physical.
In that moment, it didn't.
At that moment, yes.
But
at the same time, I was scared too, because I didn't know if he would get angry, so I kind of just followed. I would have just my underwear on. because that's how he liked it. So, and I would just get massage his back, and then he would potentially later on turn over and play with himself. And he would also like when I would play with his nipples.
Oh my God.
He used to get turned on by that. And then he would finish himself off, and then that would be the end of it. And he would still give me the 300, you know, and normally I would either get it from the secretary, would leave it in a drawer in the massage room.
How often do you think
Just
you
like
were there?
yeah, like once a week, twice a week, my freshman year.
Did you ever tell him your age?
I told the recruiter, I've mentioned it in front of him, yes.
You're 14 years old.
Yeah, he knew very well my age. You know exactly, you know, who he was hanging out with, you know. I don't think he cared.
When Rose turned 15, she says things took a turn.
You know, just take your underwear off and get on top. And I said I didn't want to. And he, you know, very forcefully, kind of brought me to the table, and I just did what he told me to do. I was really scared. I didn't necessarily think that he was, you know, going to rape me.
Did he hold you there?
Yeah. Mhm.
No question in your mind. He knew you did not want that to happen.
Oh, yeah. No, he definitely, yeah. There was no way. I was like, I don't want to say I was screaming or anything of that nature, but I was terrified, and I was telling him to stop. Please stop, you know?
And did he?
No, he did not stop. He had no intention of stopping, and that's what he wanted. That's what he got.
When you left there, you never went back.
And after that day, no, I never went back. I was terrified. I was really scared because I didn't want that to happen again.
And you left school. Did you leave the school because it was in the same neighborhood?
Yeah, it was so close.
In your mind, did you use the word rape? Did you recognize it then?
Did you tell
No,
your
it's
mother?
Rape.
No, I don't think I did. I just thought, like, you know, it's my fault. Like, I was like obligated, like that's just what you're supposed to do. So I really did not know better.
When did you stop blaming yourself?
It was a long time, really.
Rose says Epstein's staff continued to reach out to her for more than a year, but she did not respond. She says she didn't immediately tell anyone, including the police, something she says she now regrets.
Did Jeffrey Epstein rape you?
Yeah, no, he raped me. Forcefully raped me, but knew exactly what he was doing. And I don't think cared. What hurts even more so is that if I wasn't afraid to come forward sooner, then maybe he would have done it to other girls. I feel really guilty. To this day, I feel really guilty.
Rose says she suffered from crippling anxiety, depression, and panic attacks for years until she finally confided in her mother, her then boyfriend, and two close friends. Three told NBC News that she first told them about her interactions with Jeffrey Epstein a decade ago, the fourth about 6 years ago.
Have you ever tried to reach out to prosecutors and tell this story?
No, I did not. I was just too scared. I didn't really want to go, you know, public with it.
You intend to file a lawsuit. What would you say to those who say a civil suit, lawyers, this is about getting money?
You know, he hurt me badly. I prefer not to go through this. So, you know, this is one way for me to get justice.
What does it take to find the courage to speak and tell your story?
It's a lot, even though maybe I don't look it because I'm so sad, but also happy tears because I'm able to, you know, let myself go of this burden. I feel brave, I feel strong, more than ever right now.
You know, what I see is that That's the reason why victims never want to say anything. People have to understand they were not women. They were children at the time that they were violated. And they probably more than likely were virgins. So you're looking at them now as adults. So what had happened and transpired with her probably was so devastating that she didn't even tell her mother. And people always say, why don't people tell, their parents or someone else? She was embarrassed and she was ashamed. A lot of times you're made to feel ashamed, like you're dirty, you're no good. Now she lost her virginity to this man, and she was lured by the money. That $300. You got to look at it. She was a kid back then, a decade ago. She was a child, and the money lured her. It started out that she didn't put it together with the nipple rubs or whatever the case may have been, but they were children. And children don't make decisions like adults. We could look at the decisions that adults make in this chat and what they say.
It's like I'm noticing people in the chat right now realizing that she was a child.
She was a child.
These weren't adult 18-year-old.
They didn't want grown women.
Yeah.
Because grown women can speak up. Grown women can tell you, not today. Not today, devil. Women can say no. But a child is more promiscuous. A child is more gullible. A child is more going to do what adults tell them to do.
They're supposed to be having really sex at that age. You're supposed to be worried about high school and their test, passing their tests and stuff.
Yeah, they're worrying about what dance they're going to go to next week, or this boy that they like. That changed everything. She probably never even talked to a boy after that because she's been violated. Your life changes when you're violated like that. And people are looking at them like, oh, these are adult women. They were not adults, they were children. Imagine if that was your daughter, or that was your sister, or if that was your cousin, or someone like that was close to you. And this man, 50, these people in their 50, 60, 70-year-old men are violating these young girls. And even now, they're looked down upon, like, why are you saying something? Why, you just want money.
Someone said people in this chat are gross. Yeah, you guys not to have any care for what happened to these girls when they were kids. It's just sick to act like it's their fault.
That's why people do not come forward, because they're labeled that is your fault. Children don't have the experience as an adult. Children don't have the life experiences that most people go through, that they know, okay, fire, like, we need to do something about this. Epstein and people that was older, there were people like former President Clinton. You had Bannon, you had Bill Gates, you had all these different stars. They haven't even shown you the list of people. Hollywood was there. Hollywood was there. You got movers and shakers and some of the most. I saw pictures that they showed, if I could find them, with Elon. He was talking about Trump. He's taking pictures. These people were all friends with one another. So it wasn't unusual for them to have taken pictures together, and the pictures that were released didn't implicate anyone. So they're not releasing those pictures as of yet, but the 19th, I believe they're supposed to, release everything, or they're going to look for them to release everything. But these people, these children at the time had gone through a lot. And there's a guy that Epstein couldn't have killed himself, said an inmate that that was locked up like Epstein was, that shared the cell with him. And he doesn't even believe that the man killed himself. He said it was impossible. I'm going to show you guys that part. And this is coming from someone. Now, this is throwing more into the whole conspiracy about what had happened even to Epstein when he was locked up. So it was like people believed that they wanted to shut him up because it's too many people that are high powered that's involved.
Which recently said that he saw the client list, but because there's people that he can't, because he's an attorney, he can't, reveal what he saw. But he said he saw the client list. He's demanding that it be released. To think that there's no flight logs, that there's no client list, that the thousands of recordings that they had, because I found out for sure that he had cameras on every bedroom, every
Wow.
bedroom, recording everything, and all of a sudden, all of it is gone. I mean, none of this makes sense. And look, the only reason it's important, it's not that anybody's trying to say, come on, this guy was a creep. And there was young women involved in this, young girls that were trafficked and abused. I have 5 daughters and I have granddaughters, and I just don't like it. And anybody that's involved in this should be held accountable. I recently interviewed Paul Hutchinson, who was, a major figure in the Sound of Freedom. He was one of the one that went to rescue, I think, 51 or 52 of these young girls and young boys that were being exploited and trafficked. I mean, this has got to stop. And if these people are not held accountable, it's just going to continue. And unfortunately, it seems like it's people with power and money. It seems that, from what my investigation, that this Les Wexner was the first one that Epstein was able to bribe. And, there's a lot of stuff here that needs to come out, and it's really shameful if it doesn't. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But as far as the jail cell,
We only have,
yeah,
I want to go back to the jail cell because you lived in that jail cell. And just real quick, again, tell me, would you have the privacy in that jail cell to take your own life?
Not only would you not have the privacy, I don't understand how you would be able to do it. You have to hang yourself from something. There's nothing on the ceiling that you can hang a bed sheet on. The bed is not that high. I mean, you have to try to lay down on the floor in some way because Jeffrey Epstein was a fairly big guy. You'd have to be a midget to even try to hang yourself. So it's not a question of not only are there cameras on, are there COs walking the tier constantly, especially from what I understand, Jeffrey Epstein was on suicide watch for a while. They watch you very, very closely. Trust me on that. So I just can't buy it. I cannot buy it. I'm sorry. And I have no horse in this race other than my experience and the fact that I just couldn't see it happening.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we appreciate you coming on tonight, Michael. We appreciate your perspective, especially as someone who's been in that exact cell. Thank you so much, sir.
Alexander,
Thank you for watching.
So crazy.
Alexander, what if that was your daughter or your sister or whoever is a female in your family that was underage going to this grown man and being violated by him? See, people don't understand stuff unless it happens to them.
I think that people feel as though that it was in the past and what happened to them, and it's like, oh well.
No, he's saying that, oh, she wasn't a child when she kept going back.
She was 14 years old as a child. She was manipulated. That's what older people do. They can manipulate children. And that was a violation. He should have never had it, first of all, in his place. They lured those children with money. And they said I think even some parents, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know, I heard even some parents allowed their children to go to the island. So I don't know how true that is, but I think, and I truly believe that they deserve justice. They deserve justice. That what happened to them should have never happened to them. Nobody should have to experience what they experienced. And to make light of it, like you blame the victim. That's why victims never want to come forward. Don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification. And the reason why people do not want to come, because there's a lot of women that are raped. Women that are raped. These are children that were raped and molested. And they were used by the wealthy. But that's why even victims who are adults do not want to come forward because they're made to feel ashamed of themselves. It was their fault. Why were you there? How come you didn't tell anyone? They go through the whole 9 yards. And they rather be quiet than to be victimized by the public and go through all the scrutiny because they're victimized the victim all over again. And the perpetrators always get a pass. Because everybody tries to act like the perpetrators are the innocent people and the victims are the criminals. And at the very least, they need to be heard. At the very least, they need vindication. At the very least, what's going to happen when more of the information comes out? Would they really arrest some of these perpetrators? Do they have the proof? Because right now, none of them has said that Trump has done anything. Nobody has said he's done anything. None of the victims have claimed that Trump violated them. But there are questionable acts that have happened with many others that have visited Epstein's island. Trump wasn't the only one there, but everyone focused on him because he's the current president of the United States of America. But former President Bill Clinton, nobody make a ruckus that he was there 26 times. Why was the former president there 26 times to Epstein's island? It's not like he doesn't have a home. You know, it's a reason behind that, but you have to have proof behind it. We have proof with, what's her name? Monica Lewinsky, and what happened during his presidency was at the same time that he was visiting Epstein's island. You know, when they start putting all this stuff together, and the people wanted the stuff released, they released 95,000. I mean, this is like 95,000. Who takes 95,000 photos? 95,000 photos, and they redacted a lot of it, and then they want to protect the victims. So you're still getting just piece out different information. Like we're still not receiving all the information. And it's important to put it all together. But I don't believe that the victims need to be victimized again. They want justice, they want vindication. You imagine carrying that weight for like the last 10 years or 15 years or however long length of time that some of them been carrying this burden, and they never said anything about it. And then they still see people they're more against the victims than the people that violated them, and they deserve to
Manhattan.
be.
Then the U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr ordered an immediate investigation.
We will get to the bottom of what happened, and there will be accountability.
Several days later, the chief medical examiner of New York City ruled his death a suicide. But major questions remain, including how and even with what he may have killed himself. Our review of the evidence uncovered troubling inconsistencies and points to major problems in the government's handling of the case. More than 6 years later, key details of Jeffrey Epstein's death remain unresolved and unknown. CBS News' 60 Minutes first obtained 90 crime scene photos tied to the U.S. Justice Department's 2023 final report. Those photos, taken by New York's Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, raise more questions than they answer. Some of these images are being released here for the first time. Crime scene experts who reviewed them were sharply critical, saying Epstein's cell should have been treated like a crime scene. By all appearances, it wasn't. I'm CBS News correspondent Scott McFarland. Here's what we know. Epstein's body was discovered at 6:30 a.m. when corrections officers arrived at his cell to deliver breakfast. According to the only witness who saw him hanging, a corrections officer named Michael Thomas, Epstein was allegedly found suspended from the top of the bunk in a near-seated position with his legs straight out and his buttocks approximately 1 inch to 1.5 inches off the floor. Internal memos obtained by CBS News describe him as cold and no palpable pulses were felt. In total, we've reviewed 90 photos of the scene and the evidence allegedly found there. Here's what those photos show. The sequence of photos starts with a picture of the stairs leading up to Epstein's tier L. Underlying data from the photo shows it was taken at 9:34 a.m., 3 hours after his body was discovered, and 4 hours before the arrival of the FBI on scene. Next in the sequence is a picture of the tier. According to the official FBI Handbook of Crime Scene Investigation, investigators should establish a progression of overall, medium, and close-up views of the crime scene. This is the only photo of the tier from that morning, and Epstein's cell, located to the right, is not pictured.
Some really shoddy work here, if you can even call it that. I mean, there's an absence of work here.
Nick Barrero is a former law enforcement officer and digital forensic expert.
You always start with the big picture. For example, the socks on the floor in that hallway right there. If you're documenting that piece of evidence, well, one, you would put a little teepee, a little evidence marker on it, a little yellow number 1 or whatever next to it. And then you would photograph it from as far away as you can. And then you go in and you take one maybe, a couple steps away from the socks, getting it more in context. And then you get right up, as close as reasonable. So it's you see as much detail as possible. and you take that shot. That's like evidence photography 101.
You can also see on the back wall one of the prison cameras. It was streaming but not recording due to a hard drive malfunction that had been identified but not fixed, according to the Department of Justice report. Next is a blurry image of the door to Epstein's cell, number 220. Running underneath the door is a cable that provided power to a device meant to help him sleep, a CPAP machine. According to prison records, Epstein had initially been assigned to a cell in a different tier, but he was moved here for easier access to an outlet. Prison computer systems were never updated to note that move, according to investigators. On the door, you can see a piece of paper. Later photos show this up close. It's a printout with Epstein's personal details and a black and white picture. This was how prison employees knew who was in the cell. Above that, in a similar plastic slip, is the ID card for Epstein's former roommate, Efrain Reyes. Cells typically hold 2 inmates, and following a suspected suicide attempt, Epstein was mandated to have one. The day before Epstein's death, Reyes had been transferred out of the prison and brought to another facility. Former Bureau of Prisons officials were surprised to see Reyes's card still on the door. They're meant to confirm the identity of inmates as they're transferred and should have stayed with Reyes or the officers processing his transfer. Investigators said Reyes's transfer was key because it left Epstein alone in his cell, giving him the opportunity to hang himself. The Department of Justice determined the failure to assign Epstein a new roommate was potentially a fatal mistake. Next, we see the inside of Epstein's cell. There's a bunk bed, a toilet, and a small table attached to the floor. On the floor is the CPAP machine. There are at least 6 blankets or sheets strewn about, and prison policy should have allowed only 1 blanket and 1 sheet per inmate. On the table is a pen, a violation of prison policy, and an MP3 player and headphones, a bag for a CPAP mask, as well as several other items. Under the bunk bed is an unidentified object that could be a suitcase. Along it is a pipe similar to the one attached to the CPAP machine. Neither of those items are noted or documented in publicly available reports. One hallmark of the scene is that numerous items appear to be moved before all the photos have been taken. Case in point, these socks. Earlier we saw them down the hall, yet now a pair appears in front of his door. Experts say this is reflective of poor crime scene control. Next is a photo of the bunk bed again from a different angle. You can see an orange string hanging.
He was 6
This is one of
feet.
several orange fabric pieces that appear throughout the room, as well as an additional evidence collected by the medical examiner. None of those are confirmed to be the noose that he hung himself with. In the Department of Justice Inspector General report, that picture is featured alongside the description of how he was found, suggesting investigators believe that was the string he used to hang himself. But if that was the case, and the room wasn't disturbed before the photographer arrived, he would have been sitting on mattresses, not the floor. You can see that there are actually 2 mattresses on the floor, as well as additional blankets. Sleeping on the floor and having 2 mattresses were both violations of policy. You can see additional orange fabric, perhaps clothing or ripped sheets, wedged between the wall and the mattress, but there was no documentation of those items. Next,
what would you do if you were hospitalized far from home?
So I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. Do you guys believe that the women will be vindicated? Will they receive any justice? Or do you think that this is just going to be swept under the rug and it's going to go away? I think that the next thing that the women will do, because they are women now, that's why I'm referring to them as women, that they're going to seek probably some sort of monetary justice or whatever they can get out of it at this point. Because the way that it looks, I don't really believe that anyone is going to go to jail for this because these people are really powerful. Like these are not your everyday men or whatever. These are some of the most powerful men in the world. And I don't know. It was a lot of girls. People think that it was a few children, but it wasn't. It was they said it was at least 1,000 girls. So that's a staggering amount of victims. And that's a lot of trying to prove people that they are guilty of a crime. And they have names. They have different people like Woody Allen, former Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton. You got Steve Bannon, and I see some other Hollywood stars. I'm not even going to mention their names right now, but a lot of stars did visit that island. A lot of people in the industry they visited that island. So I guess they got to see what was going on when people would stay at the island. How many of the people of these girls are proving that they were there? Because like it's not like the young women aren't alive. Like who actually visit the island, with Epstein? So there's a lot to this story and it's a lot more, but I think that they're going to have a hard time because people would rather hold the girls at that time more accountable than the men that committed the crime. And this is one of the reasons why people who experience rape or any type of sexual violation, they don't come forward because first of all, people don't believe them. Second of all, they blame the victims more than the person that committed the crime. And that's how it goes. So people have to understand that at the time, these were children. I'm gonna show you guys some of the girls.
We were underage.
These are some of the girls. They were little girls.
I was 16. I was 16. I started going to him when I was like 14, 15, 14 turning 15. If you think at 14, $200, that's a lot of money at 14 years old. I mean, that's a lot of money now.
She's like, oh, do you need to make any extra money? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, I can give you, like $200. Like this older guy in Palm Beach. He gets a lot of massages from girls. That was really
They were recruited by someone who was adept at finding girls that would be willing to, go to a house for a few $100s. As it started out, give a man a back rub, but many cases it turned into something far worse than that, elevated to a crime and a serious crime. In some cases, sexual batteries.
My life would have been different if I would have never went to Jeffrey Epstein's house. It was just a dark turning point in my life.
On June 30th, 2008, Jeffrey Epstein, a Palm Beach multimillionaire hedge fund manager, received what might have been the most lenient plea deal for a serial sex offender in U.S. history. The Miami Herald identified over 60 of his victims, just young middle and high school girls at the time of the abuse. More than a decade later, several of them are talking for the first time about how they were molested by Epstein and believe they were betrayed by the very prosecutors who were supposed to hold Epstein accountable.
They came from fairly disadvantaged backgrounds. There was some dysfunction in their families. The lure of a lot of money was more than they were able to resist.
I went from an abusive situation to being a runaway to living in foster homes to just already being hardened by life on the streets. The other girls that I personally know that were coming from trailer parks, that were having gun shootings, drugs. My mother was on drugs at the time. Wow. And she couldn't provide for me, and I was pretty much homeless.
One child would be lured over, would be paid substantial sums of money, would be offered the further inducement of being paid a bounty for anybody else that she was able to bring to Epstein. A network developed where many young girls in the same kinds of circumstance wound up being victimized.
The three of us slid into the backseat of the cab and we drove. And I remember just driving down Okeechobee Boulevard and thinking how I had never been on Palm Beach Island before in my whole entire life, that I had lived in West Palm Beach.
By the time I was 16, I brought him up to 75 girls, all the ages of, 14, 15, 16, people going from 8th grade to 9th grade at just school parties is where I recruit him from. All Jeffrey cared about was go find me more girls. His appetite was insatiable. He couldn't stop. He wanted new, fresh, young faces every single day.
The sheer volume of girls, the frequency, sometimes several or many in the same day, the age of the girls. In some cases, there were victims that didn't know each other, had never met each other, but they had basically the same story.
I remember there was a staircase, and it was kind of like a spiral almost.
And she brings us up the stairs, and it was like spiral stairs. You walked into his bedroom, around his bed, to almost a very little hall, and then it was another door. And that's where everything would happen, was in his bathroom. He would have a dresser
and it was filled with like the first drawer was lotion, and then like the third drawer down was like sex toys. So we would take the massage table out and set it up in the middle of the room.
Yeah, he came in with his white towel on around him.
And then he just laid down in his towel on his stomach, and he was just talking to people on the phone. When he flipped over, that's when he said, okay, you can go ahead and take off your shirt and pants, but you can stay in your underwear.
And he would want us to stand next to him, and he would masturbate while he stared at us, touched us.
To pull his nipples and to play with them in between his fingers. And also while I was playing with his nipples, he kept doing that stuff to me. But he was very aggressive, like when he would do it.
And then he tried to put his finger in my underwear, and I like jumped back, and I pulled back, and I was like, whoa. And he's like, no, it's okay. I'm sorry. I won't do that. And then he went back to doing that. He's like, just on the outside. And I'm like, oh my God.
It ended with sexual abuse and intercourse, and then a pat on the back. You've done a really good job. Like, thank you very much. And here's $200. Before you know it, I'm being lent out to politicians and to academics and to people that royalty and people that you would never think, like, how did you get into that position of power in the first place if you're this disgusting, evil, decrepit person on the inside?
Epstein, then in his 50s, was also suspected of organizing sex activities with underage girls at his homes in New York City, New Mexico, and on his private island in the Caribbean.
You're talking about hundreds of children all over the world, victims that were alleged sex slaves of Jeffrey Epstein, that they brought over from Eastern Bloc countries.
I've seen hundreds and hundreds of girls go through Jeffrey's swinging door, his ever revolving door.
This guy is big time. He knows people that know people that know people.
Flight logs from his plane and his address book read like a who's who of some of the richest and most famous and powerful people in the world. Celebrities, actors, philanthropists, academics, and world leaders.
It's really disappointing to look as a lawyer, to look at this circumstance and say, how did this happen? One individual commits one abuse of a minor, in one instance of abuse of a minor, and they're held accountable for years and years through the criminal justice system. This individual abused hundreds of girls, and nothing happened. It's really, really unfortunate. We look at that and we say, how did the criminal justice system fail these girls in such a significant way? How has that happened?
Well, it's just sad. I just think that this saga, I don't know what you guys think. I like for you guys to share your opinion. Do you think that the victims will receive any justice? Will anybody be found guilty in what happened to these girls? Because like people try to point just at President Trump, but none of the victims have said that he has ever committed any crime towards them. But he's not the only one that had friendships or relationships with Epstein. There are a lot of other people that was involved with this man. And a lot of heinous things went on. Like the girls were saying at the time they were children, that they were lent out to other high profile, powerful people, that they were just pass arounds. And they were doing it for a few hundred. And what they did, they were getting these young ladies that were in deprived areas. They were, their parents didn't care. They were in unfortunate situations and they needed the money. So I don't know. But I know they have until the 19th to release the rest of these files. And this is what, the House is going to be pushing for. But I don't really see this going anywhere. Do you? Do you think that they're going to be vindicated? I don't see it going any further. Like Trump did what he said, what they asked him to do reluctantly, but he still did it. But they're redacting a lot of the information. They gave them 30 days. I think the 30 days are up on the 19th. So where do they go from there? Are they really receiving justice? Do you think that more is going to come out? Do you think that more people are going to, be indicted or put in prison? Because right now, the only person's in prison is Maxwell. There's no one else.
We'll
What
check
the
the
poll
poll.
says.
Do you think the woman will be vindicated? 46% said yes and 54% said no.
It's almost even, but the no, I at this point I don't think that it's going to go any further. 95,000 photos that they got, unless they come up with out of those 95,000 photos that they actually have pictures with one of these high powered men in the bed with one of those girls. um it would have to be something as drastic as that, I think, to even try to prosecute anyone. But if it's just taking pictures with, like what we've seen so far, it's just them taking pictures with Woody Allen, with Steve Bannon, with Trump, some pictures with Elon, just pictures with different people, and a lot of these people did hang together. They're in the same circles because they're rich, they have their own circles. So I don't know. I don't think that it's going to get the results that these victims are looking for. And this is the reason why. And it's really bad. And what's bad about it, that women and girls are being abused every day. And this is the very reason why they don't say anything. They don't come forward. And this is why people get away with these crimes.
Well, Nancy, I mean,
Mhm.
none of the girls that have spoke out against the horrendous things that happened to them from that guy, none of them have said Trump did anything to them.
Yeah, he hasn't been
Yeah.
implicated. Not one of them has said that Trump was involved in any sexual acts with them. So they were there. They would have to be the ones that would have to, incriminate him if he was involved with them. But until you get some evidence, you have to have evidence. Until there's some evidence of one of these victims say that he did something to them, and she has to have proof, then it's not going to go any further than that. But he's not the only one. A lot of people do not want these files released. So they want this to go away.
The real question is, why was Bill Clinton there? So
Why was Bill Clinton? Well,
whiskey.
he's not being looked at like that. That's like he's not the one that they want. A single photo of Trump, one of the 95,000 pics. Nice try getting something to stick. Can I have a word with you? God bless you. Okay, I don't know who you talking to. You want a word with who? God bless you too. It's just so sad that when you're seeking justice and when you have the world against you, and I think people look at them as adults and they don't look at them as children. And even as children, they would say, well, why did they keep going back? Why did they allow this to happen? Didn't they think that something was going to happen? You got this naked man, well, he had a towel laying on the table, and he got you rubbing on him and massaging all these kind of things, and he flipping over. Didn't you believe that something would happen? So it's like they're still going to be blamed. So it's crazy. And then they found they didn't. Epstein really had gotten away with it. Then someone filed something else. Then they finally put him back in prison, and then he never left prison. So I don't know. But we're going to find out how deep this rabbit hole really goes, or I think it's going to be put to rest. If nothing else comes out, and they said that nothing can be done as long as there are ongoing cases, which everything will not be released within the 30 days because they're ongoing cases, so they can't release anything anyway. So anyway, only thing you can do is pray for the victims, and y'all have to stop looking at them as women. They were children. They were children. You have adults that don't make great decisions. These were children. These were young girls that were victimized. And you can easily manipulate a child, especially when you are an adult, especially when you are impoverished, especially when you're poor and that money is a lot of money to you. You have parents that are on drugs and you're living in a trailer park, low income. Those are the people that would lure with money. So it was a lot of them like that, but I don't think it was all of them because there was so many girls. And then you had the one girl that I had just showed you some of the victims. She went and recruited like 75 girls. I'm like, oh my God, you know, that's crazy. You're a victim, and then you went and got other girls that became victims. So this is what they do. So I guess they said it happened to me. Then I could get paid for this, and that's what they did. So anyway, you guys, Don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe. Please subscribe to my sports channel. I have a sports channel called Speak the Sports. And I should have said that earlier when more people were on, but it's called Speak the Sports. And it's a new channel that I have. I just started it a few days ago, but I need 50 people to subscribe to that channel. So please subscribe to Speak the Sports. Hello, you just coming on late. I'm going to jump off. You are so wonderful. But yeah, so I do have a new channel and it's more for fun. Speak the Sports. It's more right now I'm looking at the NFL and I do the NFL and I also look into NBA basketball. But right now I'm looking at the NFL. So Speak the Sports, go to that channel. I'm trying to see some more of my stuff. So I need some subscribers. It just started a couple of days ago. I'll show you guys a little bit. This is my son and I speak the sports, and this is AJ Brown is hurting the Eagles, not Jalen Hurts. This is Speak the Sports, and I'm trying to see, and that's me right there. Of course, that's me. So, and I'm trying to find one of my shorts. If I find one of my shorts, I'll play it for you. And I am passionate about football, you guys. I don't know if there's any guys on here, but I am truly passionate about football. So, win another Super Bowl as long as AJ Toxic Drama Queen Brown is on your team. That's a fact. You're not going to win any more Super Bowls. So Philly has to make up their mind. Are you want him to have stats, or do you want the team to win? So that's a little bit of the channel. So I just put up a few shorts on there talking about what's going on with the Philadelphia Eagles, and like we're going to cover Shedeur Sanders. When Travis come back, Travis Hunter, he was a Heisman winner. I was hoping he was going to get Rookie of the Year. We're looking at Cam Ward. We're looking at the Bears with Caleb. I'm really happy about him because I've been following his college career, along with a lot of these newer quarterbacks who are in the NFL right now, like Dart for the Giants, and then you have Bo Nix. He was with Lance with Oregon Ducks. He's the quarterback for the Broncos. So it's a lot that's going on, but that's my fun channel. I have my other channel called Pray Till All Here. Subscribe as well to that channel. So thanks for joining us, you guys. Thank you to my moderators. And like this is like a serious subject, but like when you're a victim, people really they I don't know why the support isn't there. It's like it's always more support for the criminal than it is for the victim, especially when it comes to sexual assaults that's done on females, and it's being done on boys too. I think that's just as bad or worse. So they needed justice. All this stuff needs to stop. And, if you've been victimized in any kind of way, tell your parents if you're a child. Tell your parents. Tell your teacher. Tell someone. The worst thing, you protect criminals when you keep it to yourself. You're protecting them. You have to speak up and speak out. If someone has violated you, go to someone you trust and tell them what has happened to you. Don't allow yourself to continue to be victimized, because what happens once you don't say anything, they keep victimizing you over and over and over again. You have nothing to be ashamed for, about. So protect yourself, protect your peace, your life, and know that, you're a child of the Most High God, and you're not responsible for the actions of someone else, especially an adult. If you're a child, and if you're a woman that has been violated, you too have to tell someone. Don't hide that. People get away with stuff because people hide when they've been victimized. So anyway, you guys, thanks for joining us. God bless you. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell with Speak the Truth 2.0, and subscribe to Speak the Sports. I am going to be uploading the games. I'm going to be uploading a lot on that channel. I'm going to start uploading more on this channel as well. And I want to cover what's happening with Shedeur Sanders. He's with the Browns. A lot of people, if you know football, you know what's going on with Shedeur Sanders. So it's a lot there, but I'm not going to continue to waste more of your time, because I could just go on for another 3 hours about what's going on in NFL right now with these teams. But that's what Speak the Sports. So anyway, you guys, God bless you. Subscribe also to Pray to All Here. We need some subscribers there. Thank you. Peace out. God bless.